A single mother dressed casually for a blind date, unaware that he was a billionaire who fell in love with her at first sight. What seemed like a failure turned into the most beautiful love story. Prejudices were broken, and their lives changed forever. A story of overcoming and true love that will touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment on where you are watching from. The March rain in New York fell, as if the sky wanted to wash away all the dirt of the metropolis at once. Sarah Johnson hurried down Fifth Avenue, her hurried footsteps echoing on the wet pavement that reflected the neon lights of the commercial buildings like liquid mirrors. The cheap umbrella she had bought at the subway station had already succumbed to the New York wind, its ribs twisted like broken fingers, offering only illusory protection against the storm that had turned the city into a vast urban aquarium. "Damn it, Sarah, why did you agree to this?" she muttered to herself, trying to protect the only decent dress she owned. A simple black dress she had bought on sale at H&M 3 years ago, now clinging to her body like a wet second skin. The fabric, which once discreetly disguised her curves, now revealed every contour of her 32-year-old body, a woman who worked double shifts and rarely had time to care for herself. Her brown hair, which she had spent 40 minutes trying to tame with her neighbor's straightener, fell over her shoulders in messy strands. The makeup, little blush and a subtle lipstick, had turned into a smudged watercolor that she tried to wipe away with the back of her wet hand, only making the situation worse. "I should have stayed home watching soap operas with Lily," she murmured, thinking of her 8-year-old daughter who was probably at her mother's house, complaining that she couldn't have popcorn before dinner. But Carla, her friend and pediatrician colleague from the General Hospital, had been relentless in her insistence. "Sarah, you're 32 and act like you're 90. When was the last time you went out for something that wasn't work or Lily's school?" Carla had argued the previous week during their night shift. "David is a nice guy, a businessman, well-mannered. What does it hurt to try?" Sarah had rolled her eyes with that sarcastic demeanor she had developed as an emotional shield. "Carla, you know my life. Work, home, daughter, hospital, home again. I don't have time for complicated relationships." "Exactly. You need to break out of that routine. A little dinner, 2 hours of your life. If it doesn't work out, at least you had a nice meal without having to cook." Now standing in front of The View, one of the most sophisticated restaurants in the capital, Sarah felt completely out of place. The doorman, an elegant gentleman in an impeccable uniform, watched her with an expression that oscillated between concern and embarrassment. "Good evening, ma'am. Do you have a reservation?" he asked politely, though his tone suggested he doubted it very much. Sarah took a deep breath, smelling her own cheap perfume mixed with the scent of rain. "Yes, a table under the name David Smith." The doorman consulted his list with precise movements. "Ah, yes, Mr. Smith has already arrived. Allow me." He gestured for her to follow him, and Sarah noticed she was leaving a trail of dripping water on the polished marble of the foyer. The restaurant was a completely different world from her universe. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceiling, tables covered with white linen cloths were occupied by people exuding sophistication. Women in dresses that cost more than her monthly salary, men in suits that looked tailor-made by European tailors. The ambiance whispered money in every detail, from the fresh flowers in the centerpieces to the soft sound of the grand piano being played by a man in a tuxedo in the corner of the room. Sarah felt like a wet intruder in a crystal world. Every glance that caught her made her shrink further into herself. Her self-esteem, already low, plummeted with each step she took in that intimidating environment. "There is Mr. Smith," the doorman indicated, pointing to a discreet table near the panoramic windows. And then Sarah saw him. Sitting with his back straight, wearing a dark grey suit that would easily be worth 3 months of her salary, was the most elegant man she had ever seen in person. David Smith was around 35 years old, with dark brown hair styled in a casually perfect way and a 5 o'clock shadow that, instead of looking unkempt, seemed deliberately designed to highlight the strong line of his jaw. His hands, resting on the table, belonged to someone who had never needed to work with them. No calluses, perfectly manicured nails, a watch she couldn't even identify the brand of, but which certainly cost more than her used car. When their eyes met, Sarah felt a strange sensation in her stomach. He showed no shock or disappointment at seeing her soaked and disheveled. Instead, a genuine smile lit up his face, and he immediately stood up, walking towards her. "Sarah?" His voice was deep, yet gentle, with a slight accent she couldn't place. "It's me," she managed to respond, feeling ridiculous. "Sorry for the delay and, well, this." She made a vague gesture, indicating her deplorable state. "Don't worry." David was already taking off his blazer, a clearly Italian piece that probably cost more than all her dresses combined. "You must be cold." Before she could protest, he draped the blazer over her shoulders. The fabric was soft as silk, still warmed by his body, and carried a subtle, expensive, masculine scent that made her feel momentarily safe. "I shouldn't," she began to protest. "Of course you should. Sit down. I'll order something warm for you to drink." Sarah settled into the chair he pulled out for her, feeling like a fraud in that environment. The blazer covered her almost completely, transforming her into an even more out-of-place figure. "Look, David, I think I should go. Clearly I don't belong here and, please, stay." He sat across from her, and his eyes, a warm brown reminiscent of melted chocolate, studied her with an intensity that made her blush. "Can I confess something? I was nervous too. Blind dates are always strange, aren't they?" Sarah almost laughed. "You, nervous? In that outfit, in this place, that you look like you were born here?" "Appearances can be deceiving," David discreetly signaled for the waiter. "Could you bring a hot ginger tea for the lady, please? And maybe some napkins." The waiter, who had been watching Sarah with a disapproving look, immediately changed his demeanor upon hearing David's request. "Right away, Mr. Smith." "How did Carla describe you?" Sarah asked, still feeling uncomfortable. "She said you were an amazing woman, dedicated, intelligent, and deserved to meet someone who would appreciate that." David smiled again. She wasn't lying. "You don't even know me. I know you work as a nurse at the General Hospital, which is a profession that requires a lot of heart. I know you have a sense of humor, because Carla said you make her laugh even on the toughest days. And I know you have courage, because anyone who braves a storm like this to honor a commitment to a stranger has grit." Sarah felt something melting inside her chest. How long had it been since someone spoke about her like that? The waiter returned with the steaming tea and soft napkins. Sarah dried her face and hands, feeling slightly more human. "And you?" "Carla only said you were a businessman." "It's a simplified description." David seemed to hesitate for a moment. "Let's just say I work in business, nothing too exciting." They talked for another 2 hours. Sarah discovered that he had a sharp sense of humor, that he knew a lot about medicine, which she attributed to natural curiosity, and that, surprisingly, he showed no signs of rushing to end the date. When she finally looked at the clock, it was already past 11 at night. "Wow, I didn't even notice the time passing," she said, genuinely surprised. "Neither did I." David called the waiter, and before she could protest, had already paid the bill. "Let me take you home." "You don't have to. I can take the subway." "In this rain? No way." In the restaurant parking lot, Sarah almost choked when he led her to a navy blue BMW that looked like it had just come off the showroom floor. Inside, the car smelled of new leather and was more luxurious than any place she had ever been. During the ride to City Heights, where she lived, they talked about music, books, and movies. David seemed genuinely interested in her opinions, asking questions that showed he was really paying attention to what she said. When they stopped in front of her house, a simple two-story building on a cobblestone street, Sarah felt embarrassed once again. The difference between their two worlds had never been so obvious. "Thank you for dinner and the ride," she said, starting to take off the blazer. "Keep it for today. You can return it at our next date." His smile was confident, but not arrogant. "Who said there will be a next date?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "The way you smiled when you talked about your job, the way your eyes sparkled when you told me about that patient who recovered against all odds. A woman like that deserves much more than just one date." Sarah felt her heart race. For 8 years, since Lily's father had abandoned her, she had built walls around her emotions. But something in that man's sincerity was cracking her defenses. "Good night, David. Good night, Sarah. See you soon." She entered her home still wrapped in his blazer, feeling different. For the first time in years, a small flame of hope ignited in her chest, even though her rational mind screamed that men like David Smith didn't really take an interest in women like her. But her heart, stubborn and full of hidden dreams, whispered that maybe, just maybe, some fairy tales were still possible. April in New York arrived with its characteristic poetic melancholy, painting the city in golden hues as the cherry blossoms dropped their petals on the sidewalks like confetti bidding farewell to summer. Sarah walked down Main Street towards Mr. Johnson's bakery in the West Side, still incredulous that David had actually called 3 days after that dinner at the View. "How about a real morning coffee, New Yorker style?" he had suggested over the phone, his voice carrying that playful tone she was starting to recognize. Nothing fancy, just warm French bread and black coffee. Sarah had hesitated. During the 3 days since their date, she had mentally replayed every moment of that night, searching for signs that he was just being polite, that he wouldn't call again. Men like David Smith, elegant, successful, clearly from another social stratum, didn't take an interest in nurses from the outskirts raising daughters alone, at least not beyond a night of curiosity. "Sarah, are you still there?" His voice brought her back to reality. Yes. Sorry, it's just..." She sighed, deciding to be honest. "Look, David, I don't know if this is a good idea. We're from very different worlds. We're just two people who enjoyed each other's company. The rest is just details." Details. If he knew that the details included an 8-year-old daughter, a nurse's salary that barely covered the bills, and a closet with 3 decent dresses, maybe he wouldn't be so dismissive. But something in the sincerity of his voice convinced her to accept. Now, standing in front of the traditional bakery, with its yellow formica tables, and the smell of bread coming from the oven, Sarah wondered if she had made the right choice. She wore her only pair of unripped jeans and a navy blue blouse that disguised the... David was already there, sitting at a corner table, and the sight of him made Sarah's stomach do a flip. He was wearing a light blue polo shirt and jeans, casual clothes that somehow looked like they had come straight out of a men's fashion magazine. His hair was slightly tousled, as if he had run his hand through it, and when he saw her walk in, that devastating smile lit up his face. "You arrived at the perfect time," he said, standing up to pull out a chair for her. "They just took a fresh batch of French bread out of the oven." "Do you always come to bakeries on Main Street?" Sarah asked, accepting the black coffee he had ordered for her. "Actually, I had never stepped into a neighborhood bakery before," he confessed, looking slightly embarrassed. "I usually bought these things at, well, more upscale places." "Upscale?" Sarah raised an eyebrow, amused. "You mean expensive?" "Touché," David laughed, and she noticed he had a genuine laugh that reached his eyes. "I'm trying to reform myself. Step out of the bubble, get to know the real city." "And how's that experience going?" David bit into the French bread with butter, closed his eyes for a moment and sighed dramatically. "New life. I'm never going back to those pretentious croissants." Sarah couldn't help but laugh. "Wow, you are dramatic." "Only with the important things," he said, and his tone shifted slightly, becoming more serious. "Like the fact that you're laughing. I love it when you laugh. Your eyes change completely." The comment caught her off guard, and she felt warmth rise to her neck. "Stop it." "Stop what?" "With that soap opera talk, it doesn't work on me." "Great, because it's not talk." David leaned slightly forward, his eyes locked on hers. "It's observation. You have a way of laughing that transforms your whole face. It's like all your worries disappear at once." Sarah stirred her coffee, trying to hide how much those words affected her. It had been years since anyone had looked at her with such attention, noticing details about her beyond her work efficiency or her dedication to her daughter. "And you? What's your story?" she asked, changing the subject. "Carla didn't tell me much about you." "There's not much to tell. I work a lot, travel when I can, read when I have time." David shrugged, but she noticed the answer was too vague. "What kind of business do you do?" "Investments mainly. A few companies, a few projects." Again that polite evasiveness. "Nothing too exciting. And you? What's it like working at the General Hospital?" Sarah noticed the change of subject but decided not to press. Everyone had the right to some privacy, especially on a second date. "It's intense, sometimes rewarding, sometimes frustrating. Yesterday we saved a 6-year-old boy who came in with severe pneumonia. Seeing the relief on the mother's face, it's priceless." "That must be hard to deal with so much suffering every day." "It is, but it also makes you appreciate the little things. A smile, a sincere thank you, seeing someone recover." She paused, realizing she was talking too much. "Sorry, it must be boring to hear about work." "On the contrary, you talk about your job like someone talks about a passion. It's beautiful to see." They spent 2 hours talking. David asked about her routine, the city, her opinions with a genuine curiosity that surprised her. He seemed fascinated by details she considered mundane, like how it was to take 3 different modes of transportation to get to work, how the hospital's shift system worked, what her favorite TV shows were. "Can I take you to see a place?" he asked when they finished their coffee. "What place?" "Surprise. Trust me." 20 minutes later, they were at Central Park. David had parked the BMW in a spot near the main gate, and they walked through the tree-lined paths where families enjoyed the sunny Sunday. "This place is amazing," David said, watching the children play in the playgrounds, couples sitting on benches, groups having picnics on the grass. "You've never been to Central Park?" Sarah asked incredulously. "I drove by on my way to other places, but I never stopped to be here." "My daughter loves this park," Sarah said without thinking, and immediately regretted it. She had decided not to mention Lily yet, at least not until she was sure David was genuinely interested. "You have a daughter." He stopped walking, turning to her with an expression she couldn't decipher. Sarah's heart raced. There it was, the moment that had ended all her potential relationships before they even started. "I do," she said, lifting her chin with a defensive determination. "Lily, 8 years old. If that's a problem, why would it be a problem?" David looked genuinely confused. "Because, well, you know, single men usually aren't interested in women with kids. Too much baggage, too much complication." David was silent for a moment, studying her face. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. "Sarah, can I ask you a very direct question?" She nodded, bracing herself for the worst. What kind of men have you been meeting? What do you mean? Any decent man knows that a woman raising a child alone is one of the strongest creatures out there. If someone sees that as baggage, the problem is with him, not with you. Sarah felt her eyes welling up. For 8 years since she found out she was pregnant and Lily's father had vanished from her life as if he had never existed, she had carried the feeling of being less desirable in the dating market. "Hey," David gently touched her arm. "Did I say something wrong?" "No, you said something very right. It's just that I'm not used to hearing that." "You should be. Tell me about her." And Sarah found herself talking about Lily, her precocious intelligence, her humor that resembled Sarah's, her dreams of becoming a veterinarian, her passion for cartoons, and her habit of asking impossible questions. "She sounds amazing," David said when Sarah finished. "It's true. She's the most important person in my life." "It must be." They resumed walking, and David shared about his own family. Parents who traveled a lot, siblings living abroad, a family dynamic that seemed quite different from hers. "Do you live alone?" Sarah asked. "Yeah, in an apartment, in Brooklyn. Nothing special." When he dropped her off at home in the late afternoon, Sarah felt as if she had spent the day in a parallel universe. David had shown no signs of discomfort or disinterest when he learned about Lily. On the contrary, he seemed intrigued, asking questions about their routine, about the challenges of single motherhood. "Can I see you again next week?" he asked before she got out of the car. "Why do you want to keep seeing me?" The question slipped out before she could hold it back. David turned off the engine and faced her completely. "Because when I'm with you, I feel like I can be myself. Because you talk about your passions in a way that reminds me how important it is to have passions. Because you are real, Sarah. You're not trying to impress me or be someone you're not. And because—" He hesitated, as if he was about to say something deeper but changed his mind. "Because I want to get to know you for real. All of you, including the amazing mom that you are." Sarah felt her heart race again. "All right, but next time you come over for lunch. Simple food, nothing fancy." "Perfect. I can't wait to meet Lily." As she climbed the stairs to her home, Sarah found herself smiling. For the first time in years, she had the feeling that maybe, just maybe, someone was interested in the complete woman she was. Mother, nurse, dreamer, survivor. The scent of the purple jacarandas she had carried on her clothes followed her into her dreams that night. May brought with it autumn in its fullness, transforming New York into a symphony of golden and orange hues. The trees in East New York, where Sarah lived, took on a melancholic charm that contrasted with the growing excitement in her heart. In the last 3 weeks, David had become a constant presence in her life, and that scared her as much as it thrilled her. He would show up at the hospital at the end of her shifts with coffee and cinnamon rolls from the bakery they had discovered together. He took her to lunch at small restaurants downtown, where they talked about everything, from politics to the latest episodes of the soap opera Sarah watched religiously. Even more surprising, he seemed genuinely interested in her opinion, on topics she considered trivial. "Are you sure about this?" asked Carla, for the 10th time that week, as they organized medications at the nursing station. "Bringing a guy you've known for a month to dinner at your home with Lily present?" Sarah sighed, putting away the saline solution in the cabinet. "Carla, if he can't handle the fact that I have a daughter at home, it's better to find out soon." "It's not that. It's just, I don't know, Sarah. You're different. More radiant. And that worries me." "Why does it worry you that I'm happy?" "Because you're falling for a guy you don't really know. What do you know about him besides his name and that he works in business?" Sarah stopped what she was doing. Carla was right. David was evasive about his job, never spoke in detail about family, and always changed the subject when she asked more specific questions about his life. "He's kind, Carla, and he doesn't seem to be lying about who he is." "Seems. But are you sure?" The conversation echoed in Sarah's mind all the way home. She had invited David over for lunch the following Saturday, a family lunch. Actually, with her mom, her two brothers, and of course, Lily. It was a test, she knew that. If he couldn't adapt to the reality of her simple, noisy, and affectionate family, it would be better to find out soon. On Saturday morning, Sarah woke up earlier than usual to prepare the house. She cleaned every corner of the small townhouse she shared with her mom and daughter, arranged flowers from the backyard in empty jam jars, they didn't have decorative vases, and started preparing the chili her mom had taught her, a recipe from her great-grandmother who came from Texas. Mrs. Johnson, her 58-year-old mother, watched the preparations with a mix of amusement and concern. Small and round, with grey hair always tied up in a bun, she had that practical wisdom of someone who raised 3 children alone after her husband died in a work accident. "Girl, you're as nervous as a cat in hot water," she said, stirring the beans on the stove. "This guy can't be that special." "Mom, please behave when he gets here." "How should I behave? I don't know how to behave. 40 years living in this land, raising you 3. Just fine. And now I don't know how to behave." Lily, who was playing in the living room with her dolls, looked up. "Mom, is your boyfriend really coming for lunch?" "He's not my boyfriend, Lily. He's just a friend." "But you're all dressed up and you put on perfume," the girl observed with the typical insight of children. "And you brushed your teeth 3 times. Mrs. Johnson laughed. "The girl has an eye, huh?" At 11:30, the gate opened, and Sarah heard male voices in the backyard. Her brothers, Ryan and Jake, had arrived for the Sunday lunch. Ryan, 29, worked as a construction worker and had those calloused hands, and the strong physique of someone who carried heavy loads all day. Jake, 2 years younger, sold cleaning products door to door and had the gift of easy conversation that made anyone his friend in 5 minutes. "Where's this Prince Charming that our sister found?" joked Jake, stealing a piece of sausage from the pot. "Get out of here, Jake," Sarah swatted his hand, "and behave because, please, don't do anything to embarrass me. Relax, sis. If the guy doesn't realize he hit the jackpot with you, that's his problem," Ryan said, kissing her forehead affectionately. At exactly noon, the doorbell rang. Sarah took a deep breath, smoothed down the floral dress she had bought especially for the occasion, and went to open the door. David was standing at the gate holding a paper bag and wearing jeans, sneakers, and a rolled-up blue dress shirt. Even dressed casually, there was something about him that screamed class. Perhaps it was the way his shoulders stood tall, or the impeccable haircut, or simply the natural confidence with which he moved. "Hi," he said, and his smile was nervous. "I brought dessert. I didn't know what you liked, so I got chocolate truffles from a local shop." "Chocolate truffles are always a good choice," Sarah said, opening the gate. "Come in. The whole family is eager to meet you." What followed was one of the most surreal experiences of Sarah's life. David not only adapted to the loving chaos of her family, he thrived in it. He greeted Mrs. Johnson with a respectful kiss on the cheek and sincerely complimented the smell of the food. He talked to Ryan about construction with surprising knowledge of engineering and genuinely laughed at Jake's jokes. But it was with Lily that the magic really happened. "Are you really my mum's boyfriend?" the girl asked bluntly as everyone sat down at the table. "Lily!" Sarah hurried to reprimand, mortified. David laughed. "Your mum and I are friends. Very good friends. She gets happy when she talks about you on the phone," Lily said, ignoring her mom's warning look. "And she sings in the shower on the days you two are going to meet." "Isa!" Sarah was as red as a tomato. "Good to know." David said, winking at the girl. "I get happy too when I'm going to meet her." During lunch, Sarah watched David interact with her family and wondered if she was dreaming. He asked Mrs. Johnson for the chili recipe, helped Ryan carry the extra table from the backyard, listened to Jake's outrageous stories about his most eccentric clients, and patiently answered Lily's 1,000 questions about professions, cars, and why adults liked coffee if it was bitter. "Mum, can David teach me how to play chess?" Lily asked when she found out he played. "You don't even know the rules properly, sweetie." "Exactly. David can teach me." "It would be a pleasure," David said, "but only if your mom allows." Sarah looked at him, really looked. There was something in his eyes when he spoke to Lily that moved her. It wasn't the forced tolerance that some men showed with children, but a genuine interest, as if he truly enjoyed the girl's company. After lunch, while Mrs. Johnson and the boys washed the dishes, a family tradition that no visitor participated in, David and Sarah sat in the small backyard, watching Lily play with Mel, the caramel mutt they had adopted 2 years earlier. "Your family is amazing," David said, and there was something different in his voice, a nostalgia that she couldn't identify. "They're loud and intrusive. They're genuine, and they love each other in a way that is beautiful to see." Sarah noticed a melancholy in his tone. "And your family? You never talk much about them." David fell silent for a moment, watching Lily teach tricks to the dog. "My family is complicated, very formal. Sunday lunches are strategic events, not moments of affection." He turned to her. "I've never seen a child so at ease with adults as Lily. It's clear she feels loved and secure. I try to do my best. You do more than that. You've raised a confident, intelligent, loving girl. That doesn't happen by accident." At that moment, Lily tripped while running after Mel and scraped her knee on the concrete. Her tears were immediate and dramatic, as only an 8-year-old's can be. Sarah got up to help her, but David was quicker. He knelt beside the girl, examined the injury carefully, and said in a serious doctor tone, "Well, Dr. Lily, we have a serious case here." The girl stopped crying, intrigued. "Serious?" "Very serious. A rare case of scraped knee from excessive fun. The treatment requires 3 magical band-aids and at least 2 kisses." Lily laughed through her tears. "Kisses don't heal injuries." "Of course they do. Has your mum never told you about the healing power of mum's kisses?" The girl looked at Sarah, who was watching the scene with a tight heart. "It's true, sweetie. Mum's kisses cure everything." David gently wiped the girl's knee with the handkerchief he took from his pocket, invented an elaborate story about good bacteria that lived in the colourful band-aids Sarah had brought from the cabinet, and finished the treatment with a solemn bow. "All done, doctor. In 48 hours you'll be completely healed." "You're funny," Lily said, already smiling again. "Can you come here more often?" Sarah felt her eyes welling up. For 8 years since Lily was born, no man had shown that kind of natural affection for her daughter. When David left in the late afternoon, Mrs. Johnson pulled Sarah aside in the kitchen. "This one is different, girl." "Different how?" "He looks into your eyes when you talk. He plays with Lily without pretending to like it, and—" She hesitated. "And what, Mom?" "He has money, Sarah. More than he's showing." "How do you know?" "My daughter, I raised you in the suburbs. I know how to recognize when someone has class. His watch costs more than my car. The clothes, even basic ones, are from a good brand. And the way he speaks, how he carries himself. This guy is not an ordinary businessman, no." Sarah felt a chill in her stomach. "Do you think he's lying?" "I don't think he's lying." That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Sarah stayed awake thinking. David had won over her entire family in one afternoon. Lily had already asked 3 times when he would return. Her brothers had approved, and her mom, who was suspicious of any man who approached her daughter, seemed genuinely impressed. But the words of Carla, and now her mother, echoed in her mind. Who was David Smith, really? And why was a seemingly successful and sophisticated man interested in a nurse from the outskirts with a small daughter? The following Monday, she would make a decision that would change everything between them. It was time to discover the truth about the man she was falling for. The first week of June arrived with that characteristic dry cold of New York winter, and Sarah felt that her life was about to change forever. Not just because of the weather, but because of a discovery that would make her world collapse and rebuild on the same day. Everything began on a Tuesday night shift at General Hospital. Sarah was in the break room during her 2 a.m. break, idly flipping through a Time magazine someone had left on the table when she nearly choked on the reheated coffee she was drinking. On the centerfold, an article about the 30 most influential business people in America displayed a large, colorful photo of David Smith. But this was not the David Smith she knew, the guy in casual clothes who ate French bread at bakeries in the West Side. This was a David impeccably dressed in a suit that cost more than her annual salary, posing next to a mirrored office building in the city's financial district. David Smith, 35 years old, CEO of Smith Investments Group, one of the largest holdings in the country, operating in technology, healthcare, and infrastructure. Estimated net worth $2.8 billion, read the caption. Sarah felt her hands tremble. Billions, not millions, billions. She reread the article 3 times, the words dancing before her eyes. Heir to a business dynasty started by his grandfather in the 1950s, graduated in business administration from Harvard and MBA from Harvard, known for being discreet and avoiding media exposure, single with no known children, one of the oldest and most solid fortunes in the country. Holy crap, she murmured, completely forgetting where she was. What's up, Sarah? Did you win the lottery? Carla asked, entering the break room looking like she hadn't slept in 36 hours. Sarah showed the magazine to her friend, unable to speak. Carla looked at the photo, then at Sarah, then back at the photo again. Wait a second, this is David? The David who eats French bread at the bakery and drives a regular BMW? 2.8 billion, Carla. Billions. Jesus Christ. Carla sat heavily in a chair. Sarah, I didn't know. When my cousin gave me his contact, she just said he was a businessman looking for someone special, someone real. Your cousin? Remember Fernanda? She works at an event planning company and organized some things for his firm. She suggested you two meet, but I swear I didn't know he was this. Sarah abruptly stood up, grabbed her bag, and started walking toward the exit. Where are you going? Your shift doesn't end until 7. I'm going to sort this out now. Sarah took a taxi, an extravagance she couldn't afford, but at that moment seemed necessary, and headed straight to the address in the magazine, Copacabana Building, 5th Avenue, 37th floor. The sun was beginning to rise when she arrived at the lobby of the most imposing office building on 5th Avenue. Italian marble covered the floor, crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceiling, and an ornamental fountain dominated the center of the space. She felt like an intruder in hospital scrubs in this temple of American capitalism. "How can I help you?" asked the security guard, in a tone that made it clear she didn't belong there. "I need to speak with David Smith. Do you have an appointment?" "No, but it's urgent." The man assessed her from head to toe, clearly deciding that she didn't pose enough of a threat to trigger more serious security protocols. "Please wait here." After a whispered phone conversation, he returned. "Mr. Smith will be down in a few minutes." Sarah waited, feeling smaller in that intimidating environment. Executives in impeccably tailored suits came and went, all seeming to have absolute certainty of their place in the world. She was there in wrinkled scrubs, hair tied back in a messy ponytail, exuding the fatigue of someone who had worked all night. When the elevator doors opened and David stepped out, Sarah felt as if she was seeing a stranger. He wore a charcoal grey suit that seemed tailored to his body, a dark blue silk tie, and Italian shoes that shone. His hair was perfectly styled, and there was an authority in his posture that she had never noticed before. When he saw her, his expression changed from surprise to something that looked like fear. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" She held up the magazine, open to the page with his photo. "Who are you?" David closed his eyes for a moment, as if preparing for an inevitable blow. "Can we talk in my office?" "I'd prefer right here, thanks." "Sarah, please." 2.8 billion, David. Billions. And you taking me to eat French bread at the bakery, pretending to be an ordinary businessman driving a borrowed BMW. The BMW isn't borrowed, it's mine. Your cheaper BMW, I imagine. David ran a hand through his hair, disheveling his perfect hairstyle. "I can explain." "Can you really? Because I would very much like to understand why a billionaire decides to play peasant with a nurse from the outskirts. Is it some kind of fantasy? Poverty tourism?" "It's nothing like that." "Then what is it? A bet? Did you bet your rich friends that you could make a poor girl fall in love with you?" Sarah's voice rose, and some people in the lobby began to look. Sarah felt a gentle touch on her arm. "Sarah, people are watching. Let's go somewhere we can talk properly." "Oh, now you care about what people think? It must be embarrassing to be seen with someone like me in a place like this." "Stop!" His voice turned firm, and for a moment she saw the CEO behind the kind man. "Never say something like that again. Never." "Why not? It's the truth, isn't it? I'm the poor nurse you use for fun when you're bored with your rich life." David took her hand, and without asking, and, for permission, led her to a secluded cafe inside the building. He sat her at a private table and ordered 2 coffees that arrived in porcelain cups that probably cost more than her sneakers. "Do you want to know the truth?" he said, and there was a vulnerability in his voice that she had never heard before. "The truth is that 5 years ago, I was married to a woman who told me she loved me. I found out, on our 2nd wedding anniversary, that she had been having an affair with my best friend since before our engagement. When I confronted them, do you know what she said?" Sarah fell silent. "She said she never loved me, that she married me for the money and the status, and that she would stay married if I pretended not to know anything, because real love she felt for Ricardo, but the lifestyle she had with me." David took a sip of his coffee and continued. "Since then, every woman I've met knew exactly who I was before the first date. They would come calculating how much my assets were worth, what kind of life they could have as my wife, what jewelry they could receive. None of them were interested in David, only in what David could offer. And you decided to lie to me. I decided not to tell yet. There's a difference." "What difference?" "The difference is that when you laugh at my jokes, you're not laughing because they're jokes from a billionaire. When you tell me about your day at the hospital, you're not trying to impress me. When you disagree with me, and you disagree quite a bit, you're not afraid to contradict someone who can buy things for you." Sarah felt tears burning in her eyes. "But you lied, David, about who you are, about your life, about everything." "I didn't lie about what matters. I didn't lie about enjoying being with you. I didn't lie about thinking you're amazing. I didn't lie about falling for you." The last sentence was said in such a low tone that she almost didn't hear it. "You're falling for me?" "I'm in love with you, Sarah, completely. And for the first time in my adult life, I know it's for myself, not for my money." "How can I be sure of that?" David was silent for a long moment. Then he took off his watch, which Sarah now realized was a Patek Philippe worth more than her house, and placed it on the table, along with his car keys and wallet. "What are you doing?" "Proving. All of this," he gestured to the objects, "is just stuff. What's here," he placed his hand over his heart, "is real. If you want to keep seeing me, it will be David that you met at the bakery. No money, no luxury, no conveniences, just me. And your company, your responsibilities. I have competent partners. I can delegate more, work less, live more." Sarah looked at the man she had met 2 months ago and wondered if she really knew him. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw the same kindness, the same sincerity that had drawn her in from the first meeting. "Why should I trust you after discovering that you omitted who you really are?" "Because," David said, taking her hands, "I never lied about how I feel, and because you're the first person in years who makes me want to be better than I am." Sarah closed her eyes. Her heart was torn. Between the pain of discovery and the hope that maybe, just maybe, this man was as real as he seemed. "I need time to process this," she finally said, "as much time as you need. And I need you to be completely honest with me from now on, about everything. I promise." Sarah stood up to leave but turned one last time. "David?" "Yes?" "Next time you decide to omit something important, remember that women like me don't have time for games. Our lives are too complicated to deal with lies, even if they're well-intentioned." And she left, leaving him, alone with his billions and the certainty that he had found the only woman who could love him for the man he truly was. July arrived with the biting cold typical of New York winters, and Sarah felt her life had become as frozen as the mornings on the East Side. 2 weeks had passed since the confrontation at Fifth Avenue, and she oscillated between anger, hurt, and a longing that caught her by surprise at the most unexpected moments. David had respected her request for time. He hadn't called, hadn't shown up at the hospital, hadn't sent messages. The only evidence that he continued to think of her was a bouquet of purple tulips, her favorite flowers, that arrived every Friday at the nursing station, always with a simple card. "Waiting for you, D." "How long are you going to keep this drama going, Sarah?" Jessica asked on Thursday as they organized the day's files. "The guy is clearly suffering just as much as you are." "How do you know he's suffering?" "Because my cousin Jessica told me he cancelled all his business trips last month, and that he's working from home because he needs to sort out personal issues." Sarah sighed, putting away a file with more force than necessary. "Jessica, you don't understand. He lied about who he is from day one. He omitted, and you know why. Omitting, lying, what's the difference?" "The difference?" "The difference is that if he had come to you on the first date and said, 'Hi, I'm a billionaire,' you would have run away." Sarah stopped what she was doing. Carla had a point. If she had known from the beginning who David really was, she would have never agreed to go out with him. She would have automatically assumed it would be nothing more than a fling for him, an exotic curiosity. That doesn't change the fact that our social difference is abysmal. And so, he likes you, you like him, the rest is irrelevant. The rest includes his family treating me like trash, people judging our relationship, me feeling out of place in his world. Sarah, have you ever thought that maybe he feels more at home in your world than in his own? Sarah had no answer for that. That night, at home, she watched Lily do homework at the kitchen table while Mrs. Johnson prepared dinner. The family routine, always comforting, now felt cold and incomplete. Lily had asked about David 3 times that week, and Sarah didn't know what to say anymore. "Mom, is David coming back for our Sunday lunch?" the girl asked, as if reading her thoughts. "I don't know, sweetheart. Things are complicated." "Complicated how?" Mrs. Johnson turned from the stove, interjecting, Lily, go watch TV. Leave your mother alone. But Mom, go on, girl. Go watch your cartoons. Lily left grumbling, and Mrs. Johnson sat at the table next to her daughter. You're being foolish, Sarah. Mom, let me finish. That boy really likes you. I saw it in his eyes, and you like him too. The problem is your wounded pride. It's not pride, Mom. It's reality. We're from different worlds. And so? Your father was a construction worker. I was a housekeeper. When we met, everyone said it wouldn't work because he was too simple and I was too dreamy. 15 years of a happy marriage proved them wrong. It was different, Mum. You had small differences, not a social chasm. A difference is a difference, girl. What matters is what's in the heart. Mrs. Johnson stood up and grabbed an envelope that was on the fridge. This arrived for you today. It's not a bill because it doesn't have a bank name. Sarah took the envelope. Expensive paper, her name written by hand in elegant calligraphy. Inside, there was a formal invitation embossed in gold. David Smith and family are pleased to invite you to a presentation dinner at the Smith residence, Saturday, July 15th, 7:30 p.m., Upper East Side, New York. On the back, a handwritten message. Sarah, I know you need time, but my parents insisted on meeting you. You don't have to go if you don't want to, but they would really like to meet the woman their son has fallen in love with. With affection, David. Sarah felt her stomach twist. Meeting his parents meant officially entering his world. The world of billionaires, mansions on the Upper East Side, formal dinners with more utensils than she knew how to use. What is it? Mrs. Johnson asked. Sarah showed her the invitation. Her mum whistled softly. Smith family from the Upper East Side? My daughter, you had no idea who he really is. Do you know the family? Who doesn't know? Ever since I was young, I've heard about the Smiths. They own half of New York. They say their mansion looks like a palace. Sarah felt like crying. How could she go to a dinner in a mansion on the Upper East Side? What would she wear? How would she behave? And more importantly, how would she be treated by people who would probably see her as a gold digger? On Friday, she decided to do something she had never done. She used the hospital's internet during her break to research the Smith family. What she found intimidated her even more. Photos of charity dinners where David's mother appeared impeccably dressed in designer clothes, jewelry worth more than entire houses. His father, an elegant and stern man, always alongside important politicians and business people. The family mansion had been featured in an architecture magazine as one of the best-preserved examples of classic New York architecture. David had grown up in that world. He had attended the best schools, traveled across Europe every summer, met people she only saw on television. How could he truly understand her reality? How could he genuinely love someone so different? On Saturday afternoon, Sarah was determined not to go to the dinner. She had mentally drafted a polite message declining the invitation when Lily entered her room. Mom, why are you sad? Sarah was sitting on the bed, looking at the invitation she had reread dozens of times. I'm not sad, sweetheart, just thoughtful. Is it about David? You like him, right? It's complicated, Lily. He likes you too. I saw it in his eyes when he was here, and he was nice to me, not like Paul. Paul had been a co-worker with whom Sarah had gone out a few times the previous year. He tolerated Lily, but became visibly impatient with the typical interruptions of a child. David is different, Sarah agreed. So why don't you two just be together? Because sometimes people are from very different worlds, sweetheart, and that can be complicated. Lily thought for a moment. But if you both like each other, shouldn't you at least try? The simplicity of her child's logic hit Sarah like a punch. Her 8-year-old daughter had summed up all her anguish from the past 2 weeks. in one sentence. At 7 in the evening, Sarah stood in front of her bedroom mirror, wearing the only formal outfit she owned, a black skirt and white blouse she had worn at her nursing school graduation 3 years earlier. She had borrowed a small purse from the neighbor and was putting on the only pair of heels she owned. Mrs. Johnson entered the room carrying a small velvet box. "Wear this," she said, opening the box to reveal a beautiful necklace. Sarah Johnson adjusted the pearl necklace. "Mum, these are Grandma's pearls. You never even let me touch them." "Exactly. They're for special occasions, and meeting the family of the man you love seems quite special." Sarah put on the necklace, which had belonged to her maternal grandmother. The pearls were small and simple, but they gave her a discreet elegance that made her feel a little less out of place. The taxi she had called arrived promptly at 8. During the ride to the Upper East Side, Sarah mentally rehearsed conversations, imagined scenarios, and tried to prepare for what awaited her. The Silver Mansion was located on a tree-lined street in the Upper East Side, protected by high walls covered in ivy. The wrought iron gate opened automatically as the taxi approached, revealing a beautifully manicured garden that led to a building that looked like it came out of a European film. A man in uniform opened the taxi door and guided her to the main entrance, where David was waiting. He wore a dark suit, but had removed his tie, and when he saw her, his smile was one of pure relief. "You came," he simply said. "I did," Sarah replied, "but I still don't know if it was a good idea." "Whatever happens tonight," David said, offering his arm to her, "I'm glad you came." And together they entered the mansion where Sarah would discover if love could truly overcome any differences, or if some distances were too great to bridge. The interior of the Silver Mansion exceeded any fantasy Sarah could have imagined. The entrance hall was dominated by a marble staircase with a carved mahogany railing, over which hung a crystal chandelier that seemed to have been imported directly from Versailles. Paintings that she suspected were originals adorned the walls covered in French wallpaper, and the Portuguese marble floor reflected the golden light emanating from strategically placed fixtures. "My parents are in the main living room," David said, and Sarah noticed a tension in his voice that hadn't been there when they were alone. They walked down a hallway that could easily accommodate her entire townhouse, passing through rooms that looked like museums. A library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, an office with furniture that was probably antiques, a music room with a grand piano that shone like a black mirror. "David," Sarah stopped walking, "I shouldn't be here." "Why not?" "Because—" She gestured vaguely to the surroundings. "This is all your world. I don't belong here." David turned to her, taking her hands in his. "Sarah, you've been to my house." "Your house?" "The townhouse on the east side where I had lunch on Sunday. That is my home now. This," he looked around with an expression she couldn't decipher, "is just the place where I grew up." Before she could respond, a feminine voice echoed down the hallway. "David, dear, you've arrived." "We're coming, Mum," he replied, and Sarah noticed how his posture subtly changed, shoulders straighter, chin slightly raised, as if he were preparing for battle. The main living room was even more intimidating than the rest of the house, dominated by burgundy velvet sofas arranged around a coffee table that seemed to have cost more than Sarah's home. The space breathed old money and family tradition. On the walls, portraits of ancestors watched with stern gazes like silent judges of an aristocratic court. Helena Smith stood by the marble fireplace, holding a crystal glass with what appeared to be white wine. She was exactly as Sarah had imagined after seeing the photos in magazines, elegantly natural, wearing a navy silk outfit that probably cost more than Sarah's annual salary. Her blonde hair was styled in a sophisticated bun, and her jewelry, diamond earrings and a pearl necklace that made Sarah's grandmother's look like trinkets, caught the light in a hypnotic way. Richard Smith was seated in a leather armchair, flipping through what seemed to be a financial report. A tall and imposing man, even at 65, he had the same strong jawline that David had inherited, but his eyes were as cold as ice. When he raised his gaze to assess Sarah, she felt as if she were being appraised like a commodity. "Mom, Dad, this is Sarah," David said, and his voice carried a formality that Sarah had never heard before. "Sarah, my parents, Helena and Richard Smith." Helena approached with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sarah, dear, what a pleasure to finally meet you. David has spoken so much about you." "The pleasure is mine, Mrs. Smith," Sarah replied, trying to sound confident despite her trembling legs. "Please call me Helena." The woman discreetly assessed her from head to toe, a quick glance that Sarah felt like an X-ray. "What a beautiful necklace. Vintage pearls, aren't they?" "They belong to my grandmother," Sarah said, unconsciously touching the necklace. "How charming. Antique pieces have such a special history, don't they?" Sarah caught the subtle condescension in her tone, as if Helena was speaking to a child who had dressed up in mommy's jewelry. Richard Smith stood up from the armchair and approached, extending his hand for a formal handshake. "Miss Johnson?" "Mr. Smith." His handshake was firm, calculated, and lasted exactly long enough to demonstrate politeness without suggesting warmth. "David told me you work at General Hospital," Helena said, gesturing for them to sit. "What area?" "Nursing. I work in the emergency room." "How noble," Helena said, and again Sarah detected that tone that turned a compliment into condescension. "It must be very challenging." "It's rewarding," Sarah replied. "We save lives every day. Of course, public service is essential." Richard spoke as if discussing the importance of garbage collection. "And you have family." Marina could barely hold the test. She waited the longest 3 minutes of her life. When she looked at the result, the world stopped. 2 blue lines. Positive. She was pregnant. At 32 years old, single again, with an 8-year-old daughter and a salary that barely covered her family's basic needs, she was expecting the child of the man she had fallen for, who belonged to a world completely different from hers. Marina sat on the toilet and cried, not out of sadness, but from a paralyzing fear that transported her directly back to when she was 24, when she discovered she was pregnant with Lily, and the father had simply vanished from her life. "Not again," she whispered to herself. "Please, God, not again." She spent the next 3 days on an emotional roller coaster. Part of her wanted to call David immediately, to tell him about the pregnancy, to find out how he would react. But every time she picked up the phone, Ricardo Smith's cold voice echoed in her mind. Relationships with significant differences rarely work in the long run. What if David thought she had intentionally gotten pregnant? What if his family pressured her even more now? What if he felt manipulated? On Thursday night, Marina made a decision that would break her heart, but she believed it was the wisest. She wouldn't tell David about the pregnancy. She would raise another child alone, just as she had raised Lily. It was better this way, without complications, without the humiliation of depending on a family that looked down on her. But fate had other plans. On Friday, August 18th, a storm hit New York with unusual fury. Marina had left the hospital early to pick up Lily from school, since classes had been suspended due to the downpour. The rain fell with such force that it turned the streets into rivers, and the wind tossed cars like toys. Marina was driving her 2010 Honda Civic with extreme caution along the FDR Drive, which was starting to flood. The information on the radio warned of flooding in various parts of the city, and she decided to take an alternative route to get to Lily's school. It was at the height of the Queensboro Bridge that everything happened. A truck lost control on the wet road and began to skid toward her car. Marina had only a few seconds to react. She jerked the steering wheel sharply to the right, trying to avoid a head-on collision, but the movement made her car spin on the slippery road. The last thing she remembered was the deafening sound of crumpling metal and shattering glass before everything went dark. Marina woke up in General Hospital, the same place where she worked, but now as a patient. Her head throbbed. There were superficial cuts on her face and arms, and her left rib hurt with every breath. But the first thing she asked, still groggy from the medication, was, "Lily, my daughter." "Marina, calm down. Lily's fine," said a familiar voice. It was Dr. James, the head of the emergency room. "She's with your mom. The accident happened on the way to pick her up, so she was safe at school." "The baby?" Marina whispered, instinctively placing her hand on her belly. "The baby is fine too," Dr. James said gently. "We detected the pregnancy in the tests. You're approximately 6 weeks along. There was a small bleeding due to the trauma, but it's stabilized." Marina closed her eyes, feeling tears of relief stream down her cheeks. Her baby was okay. "Marina?" A different voice made her open her eyes abruptly. David was standing at the door of the room, with a look of panic she had never seen before. His hair was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled, and there was a vulnerability in his eyes that hit her like a punch in the stomach. "David, how did you—" "Sarah called me. I was coming back from London when I got the call." He approached the bed but stopped at a respectful distance. "How are you?" "I'm fine. Everything will be okay." David looked at the chart on the table beside the bed, and Marina saw the exact moment he read the information about the pregnancy. His expression changed from relief to shock, then to something she couldn't identify. "You're pregnant." It wasn't a question. It was a statement loaded with emotions he was clearly trying to process. "I am." "How far along?" 6 weeks. David did the calculations mentally, and she saw when he reached the conclusion that the baby was his. He sat heavily in the chair beside the bed. "Why didn't you tell me?" Marina looked at her hands, unable to find her words. How could she explain the fear, the insecurity, the certainty that she would be rejected once again? "Marina, look at me." She reluctantly raised her eyes and found an intensity in his gaze that left her defenseless. "Why didn't you tell me?" he repeated, and his voice was laden with a pain she hadn't expected. "Because—" She took a deep breath. "Because the last time I got pregnant, the father vanished from my life. Because your parents made it very clear that I don't belong in your world. Because I thought it would be better for everyone if I raised this child alone." David was silent for a long moment. Then he stood up and began to walk around the small room. "You thought I would be like Lily's father. I thought that maybe it would be better not to take the risk." "Marina," David stopped walking and looked directly at her. "When I discovered I was in love with you, I made a decision. I decided that I didn't care whether my parents approved or not, whether society approved or not, whether my world approved or not. I decided that you were more important than all of that. But your parents, my parents can go to hell," he said with a vehemence that surprised her. "You are the woman I love. This," he looked at her belly, "is our child, and if you think I'm going to abandon you both because of the—" Marina felt the tears return, but this time from pure emotion. "David, no. Let me finish." He leaned closer and took her hand. "I want to marry you, Marina. I want to be the father of this baby and the stepfather to Lily. I want to build a family with you, and I want everyone to know that this is my choice. And your family, your company, your world. My world is wherever you are." David knelt beside the bed and kissed her hand with a tenderness that made her feel like it was the most precious thing in the world. "Marry me, Marina. Let me prove that some men don't abandon the people they love." She looked at the man who had entered her life like a storm and was now offering to be her safe harbor. She thought of Lily, who deserved to have a present father figure. She thought of the baby growing inside her, who deserved to grow up in a complete family. And she thought of herself, who deserved to be loved just as she was. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I accept." And when David kissed her, Marina knew that the storm had passed, and the sun would finally shine on their lives again. September arrived, bringing with it spring and a radical change in Marina and David's lives. The accident had served as a turning point, not only revealing the pregnancy, but also forcing both of them to make decisions they had been postponing for months. Marina was discharged from the hospital 3 days after the accident, with only a few stitches in her left arm and a cracked rib that needed rest. But the biggest transformation was not physical, it was emotional. For the first time since they met, she and David were completely transparent with each other. "Are you sure about this?" asked Mrs. Johnson for the 10th time that week, watching David help Lily with her math homework at the kitchen table. "Is it just for the baby?" "Mom, stop asking that," Marina sighed, stroking her still small belly where a new life was growing. "I love David, and he loves me. The baby just accelerated things. It's just that this guy is going to have to face his family, his job, that whole rich world. Are you sure he won't back out when things get tough?" Marina looked out the kitchen window, where she could see David patiently teaching Lily how to solve simple equations. For the past 15 days, he had temporarily moved into the guest room to take care of her during her recovery. He woke up early to make breakfast, took Lily to school when Marina couldn't drive, and at night he read stories to the girl before bed. "I'm sure, Mom, he proved he's different." What Mrs. Johnson didn't know was that David had demonstrated his dedication in a way that even Marina hadn't expected. On Monday of that week, he had come home with a serious expression and an official envelope in his hands. "I've made a decision," he said, sitting down beside her on the sofa. "Read this and sign." Inside the envelope was a legal document that took Marina a while to fully understand. "David, what is this?" "It's my resignation as CEO of the family business and a formal renunciation of my inheritance." Marina almost dropped the papers. "You did what?" "I decided I want to build something of my own, something of ours, without my family's interference, without pressures, without emotional blackmail." "But David, that's your whole life, your future." "No, Marina. My whole life is you and the kids. My future is what we will build together." David explained that he had been planning to step away from the family business. For a few years, dissatisfied with the company's methods and values, his parents' behavior at dinner had been the last straw. "I have enough money invested in my name for us to live comfortably for the rest of our lives," he said. "And I have an idea for my own business, something related to healthcare, actually." "Healthcare? A tech platform to humanize hospital care. After talking to you about your work, I started researching and found there's a lot of room for innovation in this area." Marina was left speechless. He wasn't just renouncing his world, he was embracing hers. But the reaction from the Smith family was even more dramatic than they expected. On Thursday, Helena Smith showed up at Marina's house unannounced. Elegant as always, but with a coldness that cut like ice, she asked to speak to David privately. "I know you're in there," she said, standing on the sidewalk as if the east side ground could contaminate her. "We need to talk." David went out to meet her, and Marina watched from the window as a heated discussion lasted 20 minutes. She couldn't hear the words, but she saw the gestures, Helena pointing disdainfully at the house, David crossing his arms defensively, both visibly agitated. When David returned home, he looked visibly shaken. "What did she want?" Marina asked. "To offer money for you to stay away from me." Marina felt her blood run cold. How much? $2 million. The number was so absurd that Marina almost laughed. And what did you say? I said that if she offered $2 billion, you would still say no. Because unlike her, you know there are things more important than money. How did she react? She said that if I persisted in this madness, I would be officially disinherited. That I would not only lose the inheritance, but be banished from the family. Marina felt her heart tighten. David, you can't do this. It's your family. No, Marina. David took her hands, looking directly into her eyes. Family isn't just who shares your blood. Family is the people who love you for who you are, who support you in tough times, who want your happiness above all. He looked at Lily, who was playing in the backyard with... Bella gently touched Sarah's belly. This is my family. You are my family. On Friday, David made his decision official. He signed all the papers renouncing his position and inheritance and formally notified the company's shareholders of his departure. And now, Sarah asked, watching him put the documents into a folder, now we start our real life. The following Saturday, David took Sarah and Lily to see what would be his new project. It was a small commercial building in Brooklyn that he had rented to establish his startup. Smith Tech Solutions, he said, pointing to the temporary sign at the entrance. Technology for humanizing healthcare. Daddy David, Lily said. She had started calling him that the week before, leaving both David and Sarah emotional. Are you going to help doctors take better care of people? That's right, Princess. We're going to create computer programs that help hospitals treat patients with more care. Sarah looked around the empty space that would soon become David's office. It was small compared to the luxurious environments he was used to, but there was a different energy there, the energy of something being built with passion and purpose. Are you sure about this? She asked once more. Sarah, when I'm with you, I'm the best version of myself. When I work thinking about improving the lives of people like you, who dedicate their lives to caring for others, I feel that my work has meaning. He pulled her close, wrapping her in his arms while Lily explored the empty space. I've never been so sure of anything in my life. That night, at home, Sarah finally called Jessica to share all the news. Wait a minute, Jessica said, clearly shocked. He gave up millions for you. Technically, he gave up for us, for our family. Sarah, do you realize you just won the lottery of men? Sarah laughed, stroking her belly where her child was growing. I realize that I found someone who loves the family we've built together more than anything money can buy. And his parents cut ties completely. Wow. How are you going to live? David has enough personal investments for us to live well, and he's starting his own company related to healthcare. Are you happy? Sarah looked out the kitchen window, where she could see David and Lily playing in the backyard with Bella. David had taught the girl to play frisbee, and they were both laughing as they tried to keep the object in the air. I'm fulfilled, Jessica. For the first time in my life, I'm completely fulfilled. And it was true. September had brought difficult decisions, significant losses, and radical changes, but it had also brought the certainty that true love really existed, and that some people were willing to sacrifice everything for it. Sarah placed her hand on her belly and smiled. In a few months, her family would be complete. And for the first time, she was absolutely sure she wouldn't be raising another child alone. October arrived, painting New York with the vibrant colors of spring, and Sarah had never felt so alive. With 3 months of pregnancy, her belly was starting to round discreetly, and David insisted on accompanying her to all the prenatal appointments, holding her hand during the ultrasounds, as if each heartbeat of the baby was a personal miracle. Look at that, said Dr. James, the obstetrician, moving the transducer over the gel on Sarah's belly. "Everything is perfect. The baby is developing very well." On the black and white screen, a small human form moved delicately, and David squeezed Sarah's hand with an emotion she could feel radiating from him. "It's amazing," he whispered, his eyes fixed on the image. "Our daughter is right there." "Or our son," Sarah laughed. "It's still too early to know the gender." "Father's intuition," David said, kissing her forehead. "It's a girl. She's going to be as beautiful as her mother." Dr. James printed several ultrasound photos, and David took one of them with the care of someone holding a treasure. "I'm going to show this to Lily," he said. She was eager to see her little sister. The naturalness with which David had taken on the role of father, both for the baby on the way and for Lily, continued to surprise Sarah every day. He had enrolled in an online responsible fatherhood course, read books on child development, and transformed the old guest room into a children's library filled with educational books. "How's the company project going?" Dr. James asked as Sarah wiped the gel off her belly. "Better than we expected," David replied. "We already have 3 hospitals interested in our digital humanization pilot program." Smith Tech Solutions had developed rapidly over the last 2 months. David had hired a small team of developers and a psychologist specialized in hospital environments. The first platform they were creating was a system to improve communication between patients, families, and medical staff, reducing anxiety and increasing satisfaction in care. "Sarah has been an informal consultant on the project," David added proudly. "Who better than an experienced nurse to tell us what really needs to be improved in hospitals?" Leaving the doctor's office, they walked hand in hand down Main Street, enjoying the sunny October afternoon. David wore jeans and a blue polo shirt, a casual look that had become his standard since leaving the formal corporate world. Sarah noticed how he seemed more relaxed, more genuinely happy. "There's something I want to show you," David said, stopping in front of a children's decor store. "David, we already bought a crib last week. It's not for the baby. It's for Lily." Inside the store, he took her straight to a section of themed beds. There was a dollhouse-shaped bed, pink with white details, that looked like it came out of a fairy tale. "I thought of giving it to her as a gift, celebrating that soon she will be a big sister," David explained. "What do you think?" Sarah felt her eyes welling up. For the past 3 months, David had dedicated himself to winning Lily's heart with a patience and affection she had never seen from a man. He helped with homework, invented educational games, and always remembered important details, like the fact that the girl loved stories about brave princesses. "I think you're going to spoil her," Sarah said. But she was smiling. "All princesses deserve to be pampered," David replied, "especially those who are going to be responsible big sisters." They bought the bed and scheduled the delivery for the end of the week. On the way home, they stopped at Mr. Johnson's bakery, which had become a weekly ritual, and David ordered the cheese pastries that Sarah had been craving since the beginning of her pregnancy. "Sarah told me you're thinking about applying for the coordinator position," David said as they ate. "I am. It's always been my dream to coordinate hospital humanization programs, and now, with the baby coming, it would be a more stable position. You know you don't need to worry about financial stability, right? The company is already profitable, and my investments—" "David," Sarah gently interrupted, "I need to keep working, not just for the money, because it's who I am." David smiled, taking her hand across the table. "I know, and I admire that about you. I just want you to know that you have my full support, whatever your choice." "And what if I pass the exam and have to work more hours?" What if the baby is born and I want to return to work soon? What if— Sarah, David interrupted her, bringing her hand to his lips for a delicate kiss. We'll tackle each situation as it comes. Together. That night, at home, they prepared a special dinner to announce the news of the new bed for Lily. Mrs. Johnson had made the chicken Alfredo that the girl loved, and Sarah baked a homemade chocolate cake. I have a surprise for you, Princess, David said when they finished dinner. What kind of surprise? Lily asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. A responsible big sister surprise. David showed the pictures of the bed and Lily squealed with joy. Is it mine? Really? A princess bed? Really? Because you are a princess, and soon you will be the most special big sister in the world. Lily jumped into David's lap, hugging him tightly. Thank you, Dad David. You're the best dad in the world. Sarah saw David close his eyes for a moment, clearly moved by the girl's spontaneity. When he opened his eyes again, there were tears of happiness there. I'm the lucky one to have you both, he said, including Sarah in the hug. Mrs. Johnson watched the scene from the kitchen sink, where she was washing the dishes, and Sarah saw her mum smile discreetly. In recent weeks, even Mrs. Johnson, always suspicious of men approaching her daughters, had succumbed to David's genuine charm. Mom, when the baby is born, will you teach me how to change diapers? Lily asked. Of course, sweetheart, you'll be the best big sister. And Dad David will learn too. Dad David is already learning, David said, laughing. I bought a doll to practice. A doll? It's true, Sarah confirmed. Yesterday he spent an hour trying to put a diaper on a doll he bought. He was more nervous than I was the first times with you. The whole family laughed, and Sarah felt a deep peace settling in her chest. There, in that simple kitchen on the east side, surrounded by the people she loved, she had found the happiness she didn't even know she was searching for. The following Sunday, they went to Central Park for a picnic. David had prepared a basket with sandwiches, fruits and fresh juice, and they spread a blanket under a yellow tulip that showered golden petals like natural confetti. Look, Lily said, picking a petal that had fallen into her hair. It's like the tree is celebrating the baby. Maybe it is, David said, lying down on the blanket and pulling Sarah to lie beside him. Nature always celebrates new life. Lily played nearby, building castles with the fallen petals, while Sarah rested her head on David's chest and felt the first delicate movements of the baby. Do you feel that? She whispered, taking David's hand and placing it on her belly. They stayed silent for a few minutes, waiting. Then a subtle movement, like a little fish swimming. Was that the baby? David asked, his eyes wide. That was our daughter saying hi to Daddy, Sarah smiled. David kissed her forehead, then gently kissed her belly. Hi, little one. Daddy can't wait to meet you. In that moment, lying under the blooming tulip, watching Lily play happily while feeling life growing between them, Sarah knew she had found her happy ending. Not the fairy tale happy ending, filled with riches and palaces, but something infinitely more valuable. A family built on true love, the conscious choice to be together in the simple joy of sharing life with people who truly matter. October had arrived as a celebration of the new life growing inside her, but also of the new life they had all chosen to build together. December arrived at the hospital, as it always did, in a year-end rush mixed with the Christmas spirit that insisted on blooming even in the coldest corridors of the emergency room. Sarah, now 6 months pregnant and with a belly impossible to hide, walked through the halls with the slower pace that pregnancy required, but with a sparkle in her eyes that even the toughest night shifts couldn't dim. Sarah, are you sure you want to keep working so close to Christmas? Carla asked, watching her friend carefully sit in the nursing station chair. Your doctor didn't say to slow down. Sarah instinctively caressed her belly. And besides, I got that promotion to coordinator of the humanization program. I want to leave everything organized before going on maternity leave. It was true. In November, Sarah had been officially promoted to coordinate a pilot project for humanizing care at General Hospital. Ironically, a project that would be partially funded by a donation from Smith Tech Solutions, the company that David had managed to make thrive quickly. "Don't you find it strange working together?" Lily had asked one night during dinner. "We don't exactly work together, Princess," David had explained. "Your mom's company buys the technology solutions for my company. It's like I sell cars and your mom buys a car." "But don't you talk about work at home?" "We do," Sarah admitted, "but we talk about how to help more people in hospitals. It's different." And it was different. The professional partnership had developed naturally, with Sarah offering practical insights into the real needs of patients, and David turning those observations into effective technological solutions. Their first project, an app for communication between families and hospitalized patients, was already being tested in 5 public hospitals in New York. On the morning of December 20th, Sarah woke up feeling light and irregular contractions that she attributed to the normal movements of the baby. It was Monday, just 5 days, until Christmas, and she had planned to work until the 22nd before officially going on maternity leave. "Are you okay?" David asked, noticing she had stopped dressing and was breathing deeply, one hand resting on the dresser. "I think so. Just a Braxton Hicks contraction." "Are you sure? You're 37 weeks along. Technically, the baby could be born any time." David had become a pregnancy expert in recent months, reading every possible book and taking notes that he organized into thematic folders. Sarah found his scientific dedication to fatherhood adorable. "I'm sure. There's still 3 weeks until the due date." But during the drive to the hospital, the contractions became more frequent. Sarah tried to disguise it, discreetly breathing through each wave of discomfort. But David noticed everything. "Sarah, let's turn around and go to the maternity ward." "No need, David. I work in a hospital. I know how to recognize true labor. And I know how to recognize when the woman I love is being stubborn." A stronger contraction made her double slightly in the passenger seat. David immediately grabbed his phone. "Sarah, it's David. I'm bringing Sarah to the hospital, but not as a nurse, as a patient." 20 minutes later, Sarah was in a wheelchair, being taken to the maternity ward, while David walked beside her, holding her hand and carrying the bag she had prepared a month earlier. "I can't be going into labor right now," Sarah said to Dr. James, who had arrived quickly after being called. "It's Christmas Eve. I have a million things to sort out." "Sarah, dear," Dr. James said, checking her dilation, "babies don't consult calendars, and you're 4 centimeters dilated. This little girl has decided she wants to meet Santa Claus in person." David held her hand tighter. "It's okay. All that matters is that you and the baby are well. But the Christmas tree at home isn't set up. The dinner isn't ready. Lily's presents—" "Sarah," David gently kissed her forehead. "Breathe. Lily is at school. Your mom will take care of everything at home. And our daughter is deciding that the best Christmas gift she can give us is her arrival." The next 8 hours were a roller coaster of emotions. Sarah alternated between moments of maternal panic. "What if something goes wrong?" and moments of pure excitement. "We're going to meet our daughter today." David didn't leave her side for a minute, offering ice chips, massaging her back during contractions, and whispering words of encouragement. "Where's Lily?" Sarah asked during a pause between contractions around 4 in the afternoon. "Sarah went to pick her up from school and took her home. Your mum is explaining that the baby decided to arrive early." "She must be anxious." "She is. She sent a drawing for her little sister. David showed a sheet of paper with a crayon drawing depicting 3 figures, one larger with long hair, Sarah, one medium with a tie, David, and a tiny one. In the middle, the baby, all under a colorful rainbow. At the top, in big crooked letters, "Welcome, little sister." Sarah laughed through her tears. "Our family is growing. Our perfect family is growing." At 6:23 p.m. on December 20th, 2023, after a final effort that Sarah never imagined she would have the strength to make, a strong and healthy cry echoed through the delivery room. "It's a girl," Dr. James announced, lifting a small, perfect pink human being. "And what lungs!" David was openly crying as the doctor placed the baby on Sarah's chest. She was perfect, small, and delicate, with dark hair like her mother's and wide-open eyes, as if she were curious to meet the world waiting for her. "Hi, my love," Sarah whispered, kissing the soft head of her daughter. "Welcome to our family." David gently touched the baby's tiny hand, which immediately grasped his finger with surprising strength. "She's perfect," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Absolutely perfect." "What are we going to name her?" Sarah asked. They had discussed names for months, but never reached a definitive decision. David looked at the baby, then at Sarah, then at the window of the room where the first Christmas lights were turning on in the city. "Hope," he said softly. "Hope Johnson Smith." "Hope, because she is the embodiment of all the hope I never dared to have. The hope for a real family, for true love, for a life with meaning." Marina smiled through her tears. "Hope. It's perfect." 2 hours later, when Marina was settled in her room, Mrs. Johnson arrived bringing Lily, who ran to her mother's bed with her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Can I see my little sister?" "Of course, sweetheart. Come meet Hope." Lily carefully climbed onto the bed and looked fascinated at the baby sleeping in Marina's arms. "She's so tiny," she whispered, as if speaking too loudly might wake her sister. "Can I touch her?" "Yes, you can." Lily gently touched Hope's little hand, which opened slightly at the contact. "Hi, Hope. I'm your big sister, Lily. I'm going to teach you how to read, ride a bike, and build sandcastles." David sat on the edge of the bed, wrapping the whole family in his arms. "Our family is complete," Marina said, looking at the 3 most important people in her life. "It really is," David agreed. "And what a Christmas gift, right?" Outside the window, New York was preparing for another Christmas Eve. The lights were turning on, families were gathering, and somewhere in the city, the bells of the nearby church began to play the first notes of Silent Night. But in that hospital room, Marina knew she had already received the greatest gift of her life, the certainty that true love really existed, and that sometimes the best gifts come when we least expect them. 2 years later, December 2025, the December morning light streamed through the windows of the shared office in Brooklyn, where Marina was organizing the final reports of the hospital humanization program that now operated in 23 public hospitals across New York State. At her feet, Hope crawled determinedly toward the toy basket, drooling in her pink onesie that read, "Future Engineer," a gift from David, who insisted she would excel in whatever field she chose. "Mom, look what I drew for the school presentation," Lily shouted, now 10 years old, running to show a poster about professions. In the center of the poster, she had drawn Marina as a nurse, David as an inventor of programs that help people, and herself as a veterinarian who also cares for people. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," Marina said, kissing her daughter's forehead. "Your dad will be proud." "Our dad," Lily corrected naturally. David had officially adopted Lily 6 months after Hope's birth, in a simple ceremony at the courthouse that ended with the 2 girls calling him Dad while he cried with emotion. "Where is Dad, anyway?" Lily asked. "Meeting with the health department. They want to expand our program nationwide." It was true. Johnson Tech Solutions had become a national reference in technology for hospital humanization, and Marina was now coordinating her own institute focused on training healthcare teams. "And Grandma Helena and Grandpa Richard, are they coming for Sunday lunch?" Marina smiled. 6 months ago, David's parents had shown up at their doorstep unannounced, bringing gifts for the girls and a formal apology. Hope's arrival had softened hearts that seemed made of stone, and slowly the Johnson family had begun to reconcile. "They are. Grandma Helena promised to teach you how to make those French cookies you loved, and Grandpa Richard will help me with math." "He will." The doorbell rang, and Marina heard David's voice in the entrance hall. "Where are my princesses?" Lily ran to hug him, closely followed by Hope, who crawled as fast as she could, shouting, "Dad, Dad!" with the determination of a 2-year-old. David appeared in the office door, carrying Hope and with Lily hanging around his neck. "How was the meeting?" Marina asked. "Better than we expected. They approved the national project." David kissed her and whispered in her ear, "We're going to take our technology to hospitals all over the country, my love." "Does that mean more trips?" "It means more opportunities to improve people's lives, and all trips will be family trips whenever possible." That night, after the girls went to bed, Marina and David sat on the living room sofa, watching the Christmas tree that Lily had insisted on decorating by herself, resulting in an asymmetrical but love-filled work of art. "Do you regret anything?" Marina asked, snuggling in David's arms. "Regret what?" "Giving up the inheritance, cutting ties with your parents for 2 years, choosing a simpler life." David was silent for a moment, looking at the family photos scattered around the room. Photos of the girls' birthdays, of lunches at Mrs. Johnson's house, of simple trips filled with joy. "Marina, do you know what the richest day of my life was?" "Which one?" "The day Hope was born, when I was there in the hospital, holding our daughter in my arms, with you by my side and knowing that Lily was at home waiting for us. In that moment, I knew I had found true wealth." David kissed the top of Marina's head and continued, "Money buys comfort, luxury, status. But it doesn't buy Lily's laughter when I teach her to play chess. It doesn't buy Hope's first morning smile. It doesn't buy the peace I feel when you rest your head on my shoulder and I know we're building something real together." "You're very romantic for a businessman," Marina teased. "I'm a man in love with the family we've built. And you know what? My parents finally understood that. When they saw the girls, when they realized how happy we are, they understood that I didn't lose anything. I gained everything." From the girls' room, Lily's voice reached them, singing a lullaby to Hope. Something about brave princesses and families that love each other forever. "Our perfect family," Marina whispered. "Royal family," David corrected, "built on true love, not on expectations or conveniences." And there, in that townhouse on the east side that had become the most luxurious home any mansion could offer, Sarah knew she had found her true happy ending. Not the fairy tale happy ending filled with material riches and palaces, but something infinitely more valuable, the love that chooses to stay, that builds together, that transforms two people into family and family into home. Outside, the December rain began to fall, reminding her of that first night when she arrived soaked at the view. How much her life had changed since then. What had started as a storm had transformed into a sunny morning of infinite possibilities. True love, Sarah discovered, knows no social classes, does not care about differences in wealth or origin. It knows only hearts willing to give themselves completely, people willing to build together something greater than the sum of their individual parts. And when Hope began to cry softly, and David immediately stood up to calm her, whispering words of affection that reached all the way to the living room, Sarah knew she had found the right man, at the right time, to build the right life, not a perfect life, but a real life full of true love and the simple joy of being together.